Well, hi everybody. Thanks for coming by. I For those that don't know me, I'm Tasha. This is a Prep For It channel. I realize my sound is off from my lips moving, so here in a minute when I introduce Denise, I'm going to just put it on my logo. That way you're just hearing me because that's just distracting, but it's where we live. It's the internet. It's how it is. Um, so I just want to thank everybody for coming. I see Prep Steadies out there, Ivy KI, Cat Rose, and I think a few more people said that they would be coming in just a little bit. So I'll let Denise. I'll introduce you to Denise and let her tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll get started on talking about the emergency, well, not just emergency, but food preservation and about mead. That's going to be our main topic tonight. So here we go. Here is Denise. I met her on Discord. Well, actually, I met her on the Urban Preppers live stream on the side chat and went over to the Discord. Okay. Can you hear me? If you can, give me a thumbs up. Sorry about that. Denise will have to come back in, so it'll be just a second. My internet is so horrible, folks. It's horrible. Hey, Mouse Toes. Good to see you. If y'all can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that. I met Denise over at the Urban Preppers live stream. And when I did, I went over to Discord for the after chat, and we just seem like kindred spirits. So I really love her, and I think you will too. And without further ado, here's Denise with Under Pressure with Denise.
Hi. Oh my goodness, my screen looks dark. Let me get the light up a little bit there. Okay, is that very dark?
It's a little dark.
It's really dark.
Hey, Helga's Pennsylvania Cooking. Welcome. Welcome. Hey. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I was trying to catch everybody that was over there on the side.
I don't know what happened to my...
I know, that was weird. Hey, drummer girl.
Technology. Love it and hate it.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to turn my cam off.
Okay.
And that way, it's not as distracting. Hey, I'm on it. Welcome, everyone.
Okay.
All right. So, okay, I told everybody how I met you, and I don't know. I just really kind of feel a connection with you, like kindred spirits.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So tell us a bit about yourself, like just personally.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up in a rural area. I live in a suburb near Sacramento, Northern California, but I grew up in a very rural area called Red Bluff in California, Northern California, on a little farm. And one of the things I loved doing as a kid and my family was really into was kind of like homesteading, but definitely did a lot of preserving food. We didn't can too much, but we froze a lot of things. And we had a huge garden. We raised rabbits for meat, chickens for eggs and for meat, and different other animals, cow, horse. Well, we didn't eat the horse, but the horse was for fun, our pet. Anyway, so I just grew up doing that and just loving that whole idea of family getting together and preserving food together, having parties and, getting all the corn harvested together, all doing that work together. So I've always been interested in that. And then about 10 years ago or so, we got into, both my husband and I kind of started, we didn't have a catastrophic event, but we realized, if the power goes down, we're in a lot of trouble. Or, what would we do if there was no water for washing dishes and everything? So we really kind of woke up to that idea that it's good to have food storage. Well, then I've always just froze things, so I always enjoyed that. But twice here in the summers, we had a freezer. Two times I had a freezer full of food that broke down and ruined all the food.
Oh,
so
no.
So I had this what would you call it? Just
Epiphany.
Epiphany. I'm trying to think of only with a lot of anger about, I will never have a freezer again. I do think freezers are a really good way to preserve food, but I just thought I have to pay every month for this. So I wanted to learn how to can. And, it is scary. It's scary knowing how to can. You hear all the horror stories, but I used a pressure cooker a lot. So I wasn't, the idea of cooking under pressure was fine with me. But thankfully we had the USDA has extension offices that are with 4-H. I don't know if anybody here is have kids or grew up with 4-H, but They had classes that were right down the street, not far from my house. So I took a lot of classes there on canning and read, and I was just really motivated. I was scared. I was nervous, like probably everybody else is, about pressure canning, but I was just so determined. I wanted real meat in my food storage, and so I just worked through it. I just took classes, read everything I could, and a lot of YouTubers are really good too. So I learned that, and then started realizing, oh my goodness, it's not just for prepping. I can make taco meat in less than 10 minutes. I always joke that I can have food like, what do you call it? Pulled pork sandwiches. I can have those ready faster than you could go out to a fast food place.
Oh,
you just, with pork, you just empty the pork in a pan, put some barbecue sauce and just heat it. And then while you're making other stuff. So I got to where I just really liked eating the food, and it was just nice. And I've had so many friends say they want to pressure can, but then they don't, they won't do it. They're just too afraid. And so that's kind of what is the motivation of my channel, is just to do that, to teach people the simplest and the science behind why. There's a lot of really good YouTube channels that are showing pressure canning food. There's really good ones, but I think, and they might be doing this too, but I think it's always good to hear another side of how somebody thinks about it, what the science, why you do it this way, and then too, the botulism thing about why you don't need to be worried about that, what it is, how it grows, and all that. And then also, then talking about the mead, I have a long family history. I have I guess he would have been just my grandfather. He died before I was born, but he used to make, he's, I guess, known for making this beer. He would make beer every summer. And it was in a little town, rural town by Red Bluff. And so all the people in the town would come and drink beer. It apparently wasn't really good beer, but it was free. I mean, he was making lots of beer and everybody had fun. So his son, my uncle, told me about it, and he convinced me, he kept telling me, you should make beer, you could do it, make bread, you have yeast, just get some yeast and put it in some apple juice. And so he finally convinced me to make, though that's not beer, but apple like wine or hard cider, by just taking simply a jug of apple juice and a little bit, maybe extra sugar, pour a little bit off, put a little extra sugar in there, and put bread yeast in, and affix a airlock on it, which is just a bag with a little pinhole in it. And it worked. It wasn't the best hard cider I've ever drank, or wine, but it was definitely drinkable. And I think Drummer Girl is on here. She's been doing that, but I don't think her batch turned out, unfortunately. But I know she's tenacious, so she will try it again.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think, because they don't drink, that why make like a mead or a wine or things like that. But you can cook with the wine and impart that flavor, and the alcohol cooks out. And it's also would be a good trading or bartering item also.
Yeah, and what I've just realized recently, I mean, I do drink for pleasure, but I've also noticed I had what a pain reliever it is. I just, as you know, I've had a rope burn really bad on my fingers. Right. It really cut them up, and they were hurting so bad. And I drank some, I don't know if I drank wine or mead, but I just almost like medicinally just kind of chugged it down. And it was surprising how much that helped the pain, because I had previously, a couple months ago, a knee injury that just hurt. And if you guys all know, if you've had a knee injury, it hurts like crazy. And I had happened to have some extra what's that, Norco on hand from something else that I had that I didn't need at all. So I started taking that. I thought, well, this is really bad. I can't even lay down. It hurts when I lay down. It just hurts all the time. And I had taken a couple of those 4 hours apart, and I had let it go for 8 hours, and it still was hurting. And so I just said, oh, forget it. I think I took some hard alcohol, and the pain went away. So I think we've forgotten what a good pain reliever it is too.
Right. Well, and also certain things like harder beverages can also help, like with coughing, like reduce that coughing, because you get that spasm in your throat when you have some severe flus and things like that. And it can help relax those muscles, so you're not having such severe coughing. It can also help you relax whenever you are having muscle spasms and pain and things like that, where it'd be harder to relax if you didn't have it.
Yes.
And I think I'm like you. I think a lot of people forget that. And even in the Bible, there's a scripture where it talks about drinks. Don't forget to drink your wine. It will help you with your stomach. That is in the Bible. So, I think that while I don't agree, my dad was an alcoholic, so I'm not big on somebody just chugging it down all the time just for the heck of it, just for getting that loopy feeling or anything. But I think it definitely has medicinal properties that people tend to forget about. And what happens if things really get bad and you need something like that for some pain relief, like say you've got a bad tooth or something, soaking something in some brandy or whiskey or something like that, and then letting that cotton ball or whatever sit on that tooth can really bring some pain relief. Swishing with it, can bring some pain relief, even if you don't drink it. But I swish and then I drink. So, I mean, that's definitely options that people forget about. Plus, like was mentioned in our private chat the other day, with a bunch of people, just having some alcohol for sterilization purposes and things like that. That's a good thing to have on hand, something like distilled beverages and things like that, distilled alcohol. So all those things are great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out about wines with the alcohol level, because a wine doesn't get that high of alcohol depending on the yeast, or mead. Mead and wine are, I'm going to use that word interchangeably. It's mead is a type of wine that's just made with honey, but yeah. So then you'd have to distill. But I'll have to look that up to see if wine would sterilize things. If anybody knows in the chat, it'd be
I don't know if
interesting.
the alcohol content would be high enough, honestly, but that'd be something to check on for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to the mead, what is some of the most common mistakes that you see in canning, like when people can?
Oh, well, I think what they do is they make it harder than it has to be. I think that's why I kind of like that Sutton's Days, where she calls it ugly chicken. You just put the chicken, you don't have to, people will say it's a better quality if you cook it first. And what's nice about canning meat is you can cook some of it, put it in a jar, like right on it, hot pack, and you can do cold pack, and you can do that all in the same pot. They pressure can at the same pressure at the same time. So I've done chicken, I've done pork, I've done sausages, I've done bacon. Like I chop bacon. Some people do the dry canning where they put it in paper. They're trying to get perfect strips of bacon. I don't think that's safe. I know there's people who do it, but I wouldn't do that. But I do just chop it up and put it in a jar like it's any other meat, but it's just really high fat. And a lot of people complain about, or don't think you can have high fat because it'll go rancid or something. I've never had that happen. So, the other thing people do, it's talking about making it harder, is they will sterilize the jars. It's hard because you got the water bath canning and you've got the pressure canning. And when you start out water bath canning, you just kind of have it in your head, I have to sterilize the jars. But in a pressure cooker or canner, they get to be inside 250 degrees. That's why you're doing the pressure, so you can get up to that high a temperature. So it's going to you want clean jars, but it's going to sterilize itself, so you don't have to do that. But I can't think of anything that people do other than just really bad practice. I've heard some people got botulism because they bought canned meat from somebody, a home canner in Canada, and they will can it. I guess that's the thing, is they'll can it and pull it out way sooner than they should. And they think because it's the lid is sealed on the jar, that it's canned then and it's safe, just because there's a seal. Or I've even seen people water bath can if they think they just assume it's sealed because it's canned and preserved because this is stuck on there, but that's not true. The product inside has to have all the bacteria killed depending on what product, if it's high acid or not. So people just need to follow the rules. They're not really that complicated, but they're important to follow.
Right. But so, like, for somebody that's never canned before, some of the big things are making sure you're following it, like for your altitude, for the proper amount of time at the proper weight. Like when you're pressure canning, and I think that's a big mistake. Or some people, like I suggest people completely read through how they're supposed to do it, like the recipe or whatever, the process, and maybe take notes.
Mm-hmm.
Mouse Nose does that every time. She has notes, and so she doesn't forget, like she writes down when she starts that, when, all of those things. And I know that really hit home with me. Just keep a checklist, check it off as you're going through it, so you don't forget a step until you get in the habit of doing those things at least.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the other thing, is it's so hard at first because you don't know where you put the lids, but like anything else, once you get in the routine of it, it's like, I don't even have to think now hardly when I'm canning. I know where the lids go. I know where the little plate goes, where I have the towel to wipe it down, all all of it. So that's the other thing, is working through getting it figured out in your kitchen, how you're going to do it. And if you're doing it with somebody else, it's great to do it with somebody else if you can. So who has which job is better for who, or if you're doing it by yourself, just how you set everything up.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. All right. So tell us on this mead. Like, how do you begin mead? What all do you do basically?
Okay. Mead is a honey. Some people call it a honey wine, is what they used to make, and a lot of people make it for who do historical reenactment from times back in, especially medieval times, because they would find honey and they could make wine with this. With the honey. The difficulty with honey is it is an antimicrobial, which the yeast is not the yeast's favorite food. The yeast doesn't like it so much. You can look up, there are hundreds and hundreds of different types of yeast that have been made, and so there's certain yeasts that are better for that. I just use this. You can get these for like $1 a piece.
Let me present you.
What's that? Oh, is that easier to see?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a yeast that I think works well. It has a kind of a floral scent, and it seems to work well. But what's the first batch of mead I made didn't taste good, because it was, well, I did two meads at once. And one was had peaches in it, and that was okay. The yeast seems to like it if you put some type of fruit in there. So now I've been making, and I have right here some blueberry mead. So I have blueberries in it. So all it is blueberries, honey, and water. And then I add a few things, yeast nutrient, that helps the yeast as well as the blueberries, and that's the only thing that's really necessary. Then there's some things that people recommend adding for flavoring. There's an acid blend, which makes it a little tart. There's a tannin, which I know, Tasha, you're allergic to. You're trying to get away from it, is why you're
right.
So you wouldn't put it in, but if you want some of that oaky taste, you would add the tannin. And then there's, let's see, I have it right here. Seems like there's something else. Peptic enzyme, and that just helps clear it out. But those you don't need. You don't really need any of those. You really just need honey, water, some kind of fruit, and a yeast. So
okay. Real quick, Autoimmune Prepper is here. Hi, Autoimmune Prepper. Welcome. Is it best to cook the meat before you can it?
Okay, I do not. I like to raw pack, except for hamburger. Hamburger is recommended to cook before. I used to can, well, let me just say, the hamburger, I cook it ahead, because the problem with hamburger, if you put it in a jar and it is all compacted like meatloaf, so right, the heat can't get in. So it's really highly recommended to cook it first. But I really just like, my favorites are chicken thighs, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, just cut into chunks. Pork, especially darker meat pork, cut into chunks. Beef chunks just in there. Yeah, I don't cook them first, but there are a lot of, because it's a lot of work too, when you're doing 40 pounds at a time, to have to cook it all first. Some people do it in the oven, I know, but I've done it a couple times, and I just don't see the difference in flavor. I brown it after. Like a lot of times, the other night, I just took a can of beef chunks, poured it in a pan, and just cooked it until all that the liquid and everything evaporated and reduced down. And then it kind of browned it and gave it that browned meat flavor. Oh, yum. So I don't cook except for hamburger, but that's my least favorite. That's got the weird texture. You have to really fry it afterwards to get that. It's hard to explain, but lots of people don't I've heard a lot of people say they don't like hamburger either. But if I'm doing beef, I really beef chunks are my favorite.
Yeah.
And you can get beef as cheap as I get it under $3. It's hard to find hamburger here under $3 a pound. And I can get the beef just big, I do top round. Sometimes I do brisket, but that's got a lot of fat you have to cut off, but it tastes really, it does taste better.
Right.
But yeah, I just mostly like raw.
And I remember you saying the other day that that like your chicken, it depends. Like if you want to hold the shape of the chicken, it's best to pre-cook it and then pack it in. Is that correct? To hot pack it like that, or
to retain its shape? I don't know.
Chunks, like if you're wanting chunks of chicken.
No.
Oh, maybe that.
I don't know.
Else that I heard.
Yeah, I don't. I'm an avid raw pack because I just want to put it in the jar and be done with it. I don't notice a difference, but there might be people with more discriminating palates than me.
That's true. That's true. Well, I mean, you look at it. The canned meat. You don't have a fancy label on it that's covering the ugliness of the food, so it doesn't necessarily look as appetizing as maybe buying something in a can. But when you open it up, it looks the same. So.
Yeah, that's why they don't sell canned tuna in glass jars.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I think people misconception is people, if you think about, they expect to have chicken the same texture as like fresh cooked, oven fried chicken or something. Where like tuna, though, you get a tuna steak is completely different product than canned tuna.
Right.
And I like canned tuna if I'm doing a tuna salad, I don't want a fresh tuna steak. I want, or canned, tuna. So it's going to have a different texture but it's the benefit is it's already cooked and you just need a little bit of a learning curve to figure out, if I put a sauce, like if I do chicken Alfredo, that's good. Or chicken soup or chicken and dumplings,
right.
Chicken barbecued, with barbecue sauce, like a pulled pork sandwich only with chicken.
Oh, yeah.
Then it's really good.
You're making me hungry, Denise.
or chicken, or for the beef is really good taco seasoning on the beef chunks. And you literally, you forget all about what you're thinking with the texture when you can put it's time for dinner, you dump the jar of beef in there, you sprinkle a little taco seasoning, you go get your taco shells and your, all your toppings, and you're eating in 10 minutes, faster. Like I said, home cooked food faster than if you had to go to the fast food. Yeah. Or something.
Yeah. Gone out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. that makes all the difference. And while you're pre-working it and the time that you took to make one or two meals, you've canned enough stuff to make numerous meals and saved so much more time doing it that way.
Yeah. So, sometimes I do think when I've been canning, especially if my husband can't help me and there's a lot of chopping involved, I think, oh my goodness, this is taken, because it does take, after you buy the meat and you chop it and then you get it in your jars and everything, and then you pressure can it, it's a good like 5-6 hours. So that's a lot of work, but you're saving so much time. You don't have to thaw the meat out. It's ready to go. We've gone camping where we've just barely heated it up and just ate right out of you could eat right out of the jar. I think my husband, right. He has done that. He's eaten right out of the jar.
So we have a question. Autoimmune Prepper said, so I just bought a pressure canner. What's something simple to start with practicing my canning?
Okay, you can a friend of mine, I thought this was interesting. He just ran his pressure canner with water in the jars just to kind of see how the process worked. So you could just do that. You could also do beans. Now, when I do dry beans, that's the thing. I know a lot of people really feel strongly that beans should be soaked. So I've done that where I've soaked them for 24, 48 hours. And then you just fill the jar up almost like, I don't like to fill it clear to the very top, just down about, let's see, 2 inches. So about the shoulder. And then you fill it with water. You also can, let's see, it's half a cup of dry beans, and then you fill it with boiling water. So you rinse your beans off, you measure just half a cup, and then put water in, and then put the lids on. And you could put a little salt if you want. You don't have to have salt. It's just the salt is for flavor. And then you can it just the same pressure as for meat. And you could do different types of beans. You could do black beans, garbanzo beans, and then you could just do a few jars if you want. The other thing I think is simple is pork or chicken. And again, because I think you're more comfortable, at least I would be more comfortable knowing this is an inexpensive, if I ruin this, it's only going to be a few dollars, well, $20, say, in meat. And most meats, chicken and pork, or it's a pound of meat goes in a pint jar. So this is a pint jar, or there's wide mouth pint jars here. These are the best because they have a smooth side, so you can wash them easier. But both of them, either one's fine. So then you just cut the chunks and put them in there, and that's especially something if you like to eat, like if you really like chicken breast, and you then do that. So I think chicken, pork, or beans is the simplest, most straightforward thing to can, that you would have something that most people would like right out of the jar.
Yeah, I think that was the first thing that I ever canned was beans, and I think the second was chicken, and it was so good and so easy. And since I didn't have the forethought to pre-soak my beans, I pre-cooked them for a little bit, and then I put them in the jars, because for those that don't know, beans, I mean, they take a while. I mean, they're pretty hard on the inside, and they take a while to cook. But they were so easy. And like you said, you don't even season your stuff like with salt or anything whenever you're pressure canning, do you?
I do put a little salt with the beans. I think they taste better if there's salt like inside the bean.
Right.
And I used to always do meat, but I'm kind of getting away from that. I'm a pro salt. Like, I like to use salt, my fancy salts, but I am getting away from putting salt in, because it's not necessary for the canning preserving process. It's just for flavor. So yeah, you don't have to. And then I also, because when I first canned, I wanted pulled pork sandwiches, or pulled pork, whatever. Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to can with barbecue sauce. But at the classes, they said, you really don't want to do that, because the canning pressure on those spices, some spices are affected by the pressure cooking, and it can affect it. And then I started getting to really be an ingredient canner. I know some people complain about that, but I like just having plain pork, plain chicken, plain beef. Oh, the other thing with beef is you can make the best beef stroganoff simple, just with the beef and do your gravy, or it's,
oh my gosh, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's really tasty.
Drummer Girl asks, are there any benefits to canning beans from the dried version versus buying a can of beans?
Oh, yes, there's a lot. So they're in a glass jar, first of all. They're not in a can. They don't have, you can add as much, as little salt or no salt if you want. They're also super cheap, so much cheaper. You can do, I think somebody did 5 of these pint jars of beans from dried at the same price as one can of beans.
Wow.
So
and
those would
just
be my...
it. You have an initial cost of buying the jars and the lids and things, but the jars and the rings are reusable. If you're pressure canning, then all you have to do is just replace the flaps or the lids. So it really does.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Unless you
reusable,
get
like the Tatler.
the Tatler. Yeah, these are reusable. But
Hi,
yeah,
Jack.
you're using your own truck. Also, you can buy beans. If you buy beans in big 25, 50-pound bags, then you're only getting them for, 50 cents a pound. I mean, you could technically do probably 10 jars of home canned beans for the price. Although you do have to consider, if you have the lids that you have to pay for, they're like 30 cents a piece, I think. So there is that expense.
But you're
So,
also
yeah.
knowing that what you're eating doesn't have a bunch of additives and a bunch of junk in it. Plus, you're not dealing with the metal from a can or the
Hmm.
plastics from the lining, not lining from the inside of a can that,
Hmm.
could be affecting your
Yeah.
food. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able to have that control of what goes in your food.
Yes, and also manufacturers, I mean, I don't blame them for this, but they do have a quantity of acceptable foreign matter that can be in a jar. And I know there's no rat poop in my jars because I'm
Right.
taking the time to do it myself. So, you don't know. And I mean, I'm not paranoid about eating. I'll eat commercially canned things too, but I know that there's nothing odd in there. I know what's in there.
Right.
So
Right.
that's my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So back to the mead real quick, unless I see another question about the canning. So you take your ingredients, you heat it up on the stove, and you pour it in your jar, and then you add the yeast to it.
Yeah, the yeast, you don't want to put it in a liquid that's over. I think people say 120. I usually try to just say 100 degrees. You don't want to put it in under 100, over 100. You kill the yeast if you put it in too hot. I think if you put in over 120 degrees. So you want to make sure it's cooled down to room temperature. I have 2-gallon fermenters here, and I heated it up, put it in there, and then I just let it sit on the counter. It could just sit with the airlock lid on for hour. It could have sat overnight. It's been all the, everything's been killed. And then I just let it sit for a couple hours and then put the yeast in. So yeah, you have to, just like when you're making bread with the yeast, you want to warm it up. You might warm it up to speed up the bread making, but you can't put it in over 100. I believe it's 120 degrees. It depends on the strain of yeast too. Some strains can handle a little bit higher, but most 120 would kill them.
Right.
So,
Right. And so then from the day that you start it, how long typically, on average, before you have the finished product?
it takes about 2 weeks, depending on the temperature. That makes a big difference. I've had it finish in a week, but typically around 2 weeks. It's done with the initial fermentation. Then you have to pour it off, and then it's usually 2 weeks. Oh, can you hear that buzzing? I should have turned that off. Sorry, having a
It's
little
okay.
alarm. Anyway, so then you pour it off into a secondary fermenter, and usually I can only handle 4 weeks. Not 4. Yeah, 4 weeks a month. It should sit there. And then it'd be better to wait and have it go longer, but I can't usually wait that long.
Now,
But I'm trying to get ahead on.
oh, sorry. We have a delay, guys, so I'm not interrupting her. It's just that I start and she doesn't realize it, or she's not interrupting me. But okay, so does the alcohol content increase over time, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, the amount of alcohol depends on the amount of sugar in the liquid and the type of yeast. So some yeasts can handle higher alcohol content. Some yeasts die at a certain alcohol content, which you might want it to do, because then so if you have a lot of sugar in the initial liquid, it can only consume so much of it, and then the amount of alcohol in the liquid kills the yeast, and then you have a sweetness in like a dessert wine. You would have
Right.
more sugar. So, but it's going to be a higher alcohol. That's why I'm pretty sure most dessert wines are higher alcohol. So it's so the sweeter you get it. In fact, when I was started to make hard ciders, I kept adding more sugar and more sugar to give it just a big kick. And I was wanting to impress my husband and my uncle with my serious hard cider. So yeah, you can. But I know there's somebody on Discord who's really into making mead. And he does more lighter ones with not as much. And so that brings me to a lot of the brewing equipment doesn't cost much, but typically people want this is all kind of dirty, but I don't know if you've all seen a hydrometer, how these help tell you how much. So you fill this tube with the liquid that you're going to ferment, and you see how the gravity of it, so it shows you how much sugar there is in it. The problem with doing small batches like a gallon or 2 gallons at a time, or even 5 gallons is, well, 5 gallons would probably be okay, but you're wasting, or you're having to use up. You don't want to pour this back in because it could have got bacteria in it and everything. So you're having to throw out what this is probably over a cup of liquid. So I don't know. I'm trying to. Probably should. Yeah. Anyway, I'm pretty sure everybody's seen it. So what I've gotten, and this was only, I think, $35, is called a refractometer.
Okay.
And what it does, this is what the vintners, people who grow grapes, what they use, to test the sugar in the grapes. And oops, I should have had this out of the plastic. So it's this little device that you look in here in this side. And on this side, you put all you have to do is put a little couple drops on here and put this down, and then it reads in through here. I was curious if the camera can. No, you can't see in it. No. Anyway, you can read it's called the bricks, and then you can convert what that number is to the hydrometer reading and get this is not the most accurate way to do it, because this is affected by temperature, but you get a definitely good reading. And what I do is I'm just using this, and when I'm making wine or mead, I write down what the reading is, and then when I start, so this is saying how much sugar. The higher the number, the more sugar you have in a batch. So then you can tell how much potential alcohol that it will make in that batch. So like I said, these are only like 35 if you get into it. I mean, you don't have to know what the potential alcohol. If you have a recipe, you just follow that recipe, and it's going to should be close to what you're doing. Right. So yeah, so then you only use a couple drops, and then after a week, I test it and see if it's bubbling, see if this number should have gone down quite a bit, because as the yeast eat the sugar, it's going to show less sugar in the liquid. So these are really it's kind of a cool thing to have if you get into it. Yeah, I hadn't either until I was looking, and I kept getting frustrated when you're only doing a gallon at a time to use up all of that. And then it's good to, in the week, taste it too, take a little bit out and taste it, but you don't, you just need a teaspoon or a tablespoon of it to taste and see what's happening with it.
Wow, that's neat. Okay, now, so what's the difference between, on Discord, I saw you had 2 pictures. You had one picture of a blueberry mead and one picture of a blueberry wine. Is it just that the wine has sugar added rather than honey? Is that the only difference? Yes,
exactly. Okay. Yeah, I can put both of the recipes up.
Oh, that'd be awesome. And what you can do is, if you want, you can share the recipes with me, and I can add those to the description underneath this after it's finished posting on YouTube, and I can add those if that's okay with you. Hi, Kat.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So, what is the difference in the taste? Do you find between the mead versus the wine on the blueberry mead versus the wine?
The blueberry, the mead is a lighter, and it's got kind of a sour taste a little bit. My husband doesn't like it as much, but I do. I like it's just a light. Yeah, it's lighter.
So it's got kind of
Tasting.
a tang to it.
A little bit of a tang. It's kind of like a blush or rosé wine. It's, you know how those are lighter in flavor.
Right.
And then the blueberry, well, the other thing about the blueberry wine is I'm adding a lot more blueberries. I'm adding 3 pounds of blueberries per gallon of frozen blueberries. And the mead is 1.5 pounds, or I think this time I upped it to 2 pounds. But so it's got a lot stronger, I don't know, how do you describe it? That red wine, thicker almost taste to it.
So to get started making mead, for me, I need a gallon container or a 2-gallon container, however much mead I'm going to make, correct? And then I need something that's like an airlock, so that whenever I put it on top, I can let the air out as the gas, and let the gases out, but not let any other bacteria or anything in.
Yeah, I was almost thinking that your gallon jug or 2-gallon, you could use, it might be better to have a wide mouth glass jar, and then you just would have to for an airlock, you could just put some kind of, vegetable bag from produce or something that you could, and then rubber band that on or tie it on, and put a little pinhole in it, or it might already have a tiny hole in it.
Okay.
Yeah. So then you put that.
And then the piece of equipment that you have there, you don't have to have that, right? I mean,
no.
Once it quits releasing gases, it's done basically, right?
Yeah, you can tell you don't have to know the gravity. It's just, if you get into it, you might want to get one of those later on, but it's better, right, I think, to try like I did, and sounds like what you're going to do is just give it a try with that. See if you like doing it, and and then see if, I really want to do this. Then you can get the fermenting jugs, and let me see. They also have airlocks. Oh yeah, here's a normal. This is like a normal airlock, what people use on the jugs, and you put water in here. You put water in here, and that you just need something that lets the air escape without letting mold and stuff get into the liquid.
Right. You're wanting to preserve the yeast, but without contaminating. So that's pretty cool. Trying to see if there's any questions over here. Let's see. UCD now has a mead making course. Cat Rose says, your tip for you, Drummer Girl says, your tip for using a Ziploc bag over it with a rubber band and a hole poked in the bag has worked great.
Yeah, the beauty of that is when it fills up with air, when it starts to deflate, that it's not having, especially if you did just a tiny little hole, you can see that it's inflated, that it's working, and it's bubbling. That's the other thing is, oh my goodness, I love waking up now in the morning when I have a batches going and I can see all the bubbles coming up and everything. And if you have a bag, you can see that, it's filled with gas, because you can't tell what's going on in the air, but in the air space in the fermenter, but you can see the bag is all filled up. So then it's really good.
I'm on it 135 asks, could you make mead in a fermentation pot like you would use to make sauerkraut?
Yeah, definitely. You just need an airlock. You don't want mold wants to get in there. And you would need to really, most people are really into sterilizing everything. You can get sterilizing solutions, but I, for some reason, hate doing that. It's just an extra step. I will wash everything really well, but I would think a sauerkraut fermenter has got some really good lactobacillus bacteria in there, which is good, is what you want. But you'd have to really, I would sterilize it with bleach or some kind of sterilizing liquid, or you can boil it. Like I've seen old recipes where they just poured boiling water on it, but I'd be extra cautious to sterilize it. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, Drummer Girl says, haha, yes, the bubbling is very exciting, the excitement of future wine. Well,
Yes.
I've done lacto fermentation too of vegetables, and just whenever you see the process starting to work, you see that bubbling happen, it is exciting. So I completely get that. Like, I
Oh, the
think
other
I did
thing,
it right.
one other thing, really quick though, that you were saying about people might be have an aversion to alcohol, but to do the hard cider, then you can convert it to apple cider vinegar, or you can do
Right,
red wine vinegar or any kind of. So you can just keep, and the you have to make an alcohol to make a vinegar, and vinegar has, as everybody knows, tons of uses, lots and lots of
right.
uses.
Yes. I mean, for cleaning, for health issues, for cooking, for so much, for your animals, even like just like ACV for your chickens and things like that. So much that you can do with them. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Anybody else have any questions on mead? And if not, do you have any questions on canning still? We can still take some of those, I'm sure. So while they're thinking on their questions, so what is your channel going to be mainly about?
I think it's going to be about, well, of course, canning, pressure canning, getting people over the fear, but also how to cook with the food. I think
Oh,
one of the things that I had a hard time with, and not a lot of people talk about it or really show in detail, is the simple dishes that you can make with canned meat. Because if people are into food storage, it doesn't really do you much good if you're not. The beauty of it is having that, using that up and having your body used to, and your taste buds and everything used to those canned foods. So I really want to show people not only how to can and get over their fears, but also how to cook with that meat. You get this chicken. We've not grown up. 100 years ago, people canned meat all the time, and we're used to it. But we've gotten away from that. People have used freezers, which freezers preserve really, really well and keep the same integrity of fresh meat. But canned meat is, I don't want to eat it 100%, but I definitely eat it more than like 50% of the time. I really like. I really want to show people how to cook and how to make it easier, and then just other simple recipes. And then too, I do want to show. Oh, should back up. I want to show simple recipes for people to cook, because I think the other problem is we've gotten so into, we've got all these restaurants so close by. People and that are inexpensive. People have forgotten how to cook, and I want to just give simple everyday weeknight meal cooking things. And then of course fermenting vegetables and making wine and mead and hard cider, and apple cider vinegar and red wine vinegar, those type of things. So that's what I can think of. We'll see what people are interested in.
yeah, I think it's interesting because I think it's something that's really needed. Like we were discussing in private chat, most schools don't have home ec or things like that anymore. So we've really gotten away from that, and with more of both parents working outside of the home, kids
Yeah.
aren't learning the basics that they would if one parent was at home with their children at all times. They're not getting as many opportunities. So, yeah, I think it's a very important thing, and I look forward to learning all I can from you. And I'm just excited to see your channel get started. And I encourage everybody out there to get her subbed up. The link is in my description box on this, and get her subbed up. She hasn't posted videos
I don't
yet,
have any videos.
but she will soon. So just go ahead and get her subbed
Yep.
up and click that bell so that when she does upload her first video, you will see it and you'll be able to be with her from the beginning on her channel. Oh, Patriot, Squid sent you, huh? Good to see you. I thank everybody so much for coming, my faithful friends, and then the new ones. I'm so welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You're so welcome here at this channel. I just love everybody that comes over, and we just have fun, and we're just silly and goofy, and we try not to take life so seriously while we're learning some
Yeah.
great things. So I appreciate you all coming, and it just means the world to me. Hey, MCK, how are you? Mouse Toes, yes, this was fun. It sure was. Let's
Yeah.
see. Let's see. Gergrind says, "What are you making for supper tonight?" Oops, missed it. I was trying to see what he said. "What are you making for supper tonight, babe?" Me, her. I don't know what you want from me. McDonald's. Oh my gosh. Well, any other questions or anything before we get off of here? Anything else that you're wanting to share on the mead making, Denise?
No, I just think people should give it a try. It's a fun hobby. It doesn't have to be as complicated. There's some people, that make it complicated, but they make really good wine. But you don't have to, be complicated. But it's a good hobby to get into, and then if you like it, then it doesn't cost that much. Like the airlocks and the equipment. Like I said, the fancy refractometer was only $35. So it's, for a hobby, it's kind of an inexpensive, fun thing to do. And then if you get a bunch of plums this summer, you know what to do with them, because plum wine is another really good one.
Oh, Drummer Girl has a great question. Pressure canners are expensive. If I see one for sale used, are there things I should look for to avoid buying junk?
Oh, that's a great question, Drummer Girl.
It is.
Yeah, I actually got my All-American can. I have them back here, but I'm all tethered to my computer. I haven't figured out how to not be connected. But yeah, I bought my first pressure canner at a yard sale. It was All-American, is ancient. I think I bought it for $25. And the All-Americans, you don't have to have a seal. It doesn't have to have a seal. So if you find a used one of those, as long as the lid locks and it has the knobs all on it that can hold the pressure. And the one thing is, I always thought the dial was really important, but a lot of people say the weight. So you can buy a weight, you can buy a new dial online. I think the dial was only something like $20, and the weight is the same. So you can have the right weight on there, and that is very accurate. I didn't think the weight was as accurate as the dial, but people say the dial can, and we've had ours tested, and it was off by a degree. So you can buy it. The thing is that's the other thing about the pressure canner, is it's not that complicated. It's just a pot, that holds pressure. And if you have the weight that goes on the little, I think it's called petcock, that you put on there, you can, and if you want to get a new dial, you can, and we replaced the dial on ours, and it works great, and is going to work forever. Now they have also the Presto, which has the seal in it. So you can replace that if you feel like you need to. You can, again, replace the dial, and they are, I think I got ours for $75 online, but if you find one used, the other thing is, see if you have a friend that has one that you can just borrow to try and see if you like it.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So,
Definitely.
but they're not really that complicated, as long as you have the weight for the right, either the weights come where you can change it. The same weight goes from 5 pounds, 10 pounds, or 15 pounds of pressure.
Right, you just rotate it, correct?
Yeah. So, I think a used one is really the way to go. The other thing is, if you're not sure how much you're going to like the canned chicken, is they sell now canned chicken in the store, like it's usually a bigger can and the same shape as a tuna fish can. You could get one of those and just maybe give yourself a heads up on this is what the product should taste like. The other thing is, when you pressure can and one thing that shocked me was, when you take the cans out of the canner, they are still boiling inside. So the stuff, I don't know, Tasha, if you or anybody here in the chat has canned, pressure canned, and then when you pull it out, it's boiling inside, which is just surprised me. And it does that for like an hour or so outside the canner. It's so weird.
Yeah, and that's after you've let your pressure canner come completely down to zero pressure after it's been up all that time. So it's sat there quite a while to get back to zero pressure, and it's still bubbling like crazy whenever you pull it out. It really is something.
Oh, the other thing is, I did not realize, I thought these were microwavable, these mason jars, but they're actually not. I think I still will microwave mine for maybe a minute, but when I first started canning, I was making yogurt, and so I would do the quart jars for like 11 minutes in the microwave to heat up the milk for making yogurt. And then I had a lot of those jars break. And so I don't think they'll break in, but if you're going to pressure can with your mason jars, I would recommend not using them in the microwave. Just a little side.
Oh, and another thing, great, that brought me to something I was thinking about. A lot of people get used canning jars from neighbors or garage sales or things like that. What are some things that they need to be aware of or check for in those before they pressure can with them?
Yeah. Now I did that. I got 10 cases, I think, of used jars, and I had a lot of them break. So it's kind of that whole, you're getting a good deal, but they also could break in the pressure canner because you don't know what they've done with them. If you know what, but the main thing is that the lid, the very top of the jar, is not cracked. You don't want, if this is cracked or chipped, because that's something that can be done, and then so you just need to make sure. So that's the big thing. And then just, you just need to know some of your jars, and all of mine for some reason break at the bottom. So you could have some jars break. So
we have a question. Patriot in the Dark is asking, does it look like a big pressure cooker, like for the stovetop? How do you know it's a pressure canner versus a pressure cooker? Because you can't can in a cooker, correct?
You can actually, but a cooker is smaller, and it can't fit the jars, and you'd have to have some kind of way to tell what PSI, what pressure level the cooker. I happen to have an 8-quart, and I was thinking, if I had a weight, I could technically do that. But usually, most everybody recommends the 20 quart to 25 quart canners, because you can put 2 layers of, you can put like 10 of these at the bottom, and then a rack, and then another layer of these. I hope that makes sense. So I'm showing.
Right. The rack is it's just a flat piece of metal that has a bunch of small holes in it so that the water can go through, but it just allows the pressure not to be on the center of the jar's lid. Correct. It just distributes the pressure over the top of the jars. Yeah.
And so my pressure canners are both around 21 quart. They'll tell you if you can do 20 or 19. So I can do almost 40 pint jars at one time because I have 2 canners going at once. So my thing is, if I'm going to do a batch of canning, I might as well do 2 canners full with as much. Some of them have it where you can do 10 pints at a time or 7 quarts, but I'm not the type of person to get a canner out. If I get a canner out, I want to do 40 pounds at a time.
Right. You're like a serious canner. You're like, I'm going to get some stuff done.
Well, I'm a production. I'm not, there might be I could see some people wanting a smaller one that they could just do some batches of soup, or like if they're into, I want to make this kind of soup, and I just want to I'm only going to do like 7 pints or 7 quarts at a time, then they might want a smaller canner. But then they also have a bigger one where you could do 2 sets of quart jars. But the reason I wouldn't get one of those that are huge is I it'd be hard to lift and move. And most everything I do in pints. I do some quarts, sometimes like beans I do in quarts, and sometimes beef stew I'll do in a quart jar. But most the time I'm doing it in pint jars.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Well, we're at an hour and 4 minutes, so we're a little bit over, but it was such a good conversation, and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed having you over here. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime. And I look
Yes.
forward to when your channel comes up. I want to see what all you come up with. So,
See the goofy things I do.
yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for being on, Denise. Thank everybody. Thank you all for coming and joining us and asking such great questions and just being fun and entertainment. Before you leave, if you'll do me a favor and hit that like button, I'd appreciate it. That'll help me to get a few more viewers out there anyway. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel or to Denise's, please do that. We would appreciate it. And Denise's channel link is in the description box below this video. Thank you guys so much. God bless. And remember, guys, prep for it. Prep for it all. Bye.
Bye.